now focusing on explaining, CAB3 in the context um, of the Joint Committee report. Um, so that is what I'm now focusing on, and hence I've said CAB3 explained what Pali is being asked to approve and why it matters. So as usual, I'll give an introduction, and this time around, I'm going to give sort of a rebuttal of the justifications that have been given, and then I'll open up the space for people to come through and weigh in with their contributions. So that is what that is what I intend to do. So we'll see how we progress, with the space, and we'll see how it goes. But I'm looking at more or less the same hours like what we did, yesterday, just to give many people an opportunity to come through and speak. That is what we want to do. So yeah, right. If you're joining me, welcome. If I didn't greet you by name, I'm sorry. You came in a little bit late, but if you're just coming through, welcome to the space. Appreciate your presence here. Appreciate why I mean you being part and parcel of this conversation. Right. So yeah, we saw Justice Minister Ziyambi. He went through the second reading of the contentious constitutional amendment bill number 3, and we know what it intends to do. But there is a report that came from the joint committee. So it's a joint. But by it being joint, it means that it's joint in the sense that I don't know what it's joint in the sense that the opposition in there. I think that's the joint bit of it. That's the joint aspect of it. That the opposition in there from Senate and the upper house. I want to believe no, from the upper house. I mean from the House of Commons equivalent. So that is what that is report that you are seeing being posted is what this guy is said pertaining to to the bill. So that is what we want to unpack. Um, so that joint parliamentary committee is now tabled its full report. It is now online on CAB3, and it has made sweeping recommendations. So where I'm sitting at right now, it does not matter whether you support the bill or you don't support the bill. But I want to believe that it is important and it is essential for us to understand what the parliament is being asked to approve as per the Joint Parliamentary Committee full report. So yes, you've seen the explanation from Ziyambi. I've decided to put that to the side because I mean once we've got the full report, that no longer matters anyway. We know that he was theatric, that he was having his metaphors and stuff like that, trying to hammer across and trying to put across his points. Right. So there are several recommendations that have been made by this committee. And when I was reading it, the headline one, we know Kuti, that is what they want. and it's a topic that we have discussed, the issue of the removal of direct election of the president by citizens and replacing it with election by parliament. So, according to the report, they said there was overwhelming support. The majority of public submissions supported, this change. And they are saying that the people of Zimbabwe were arguing that it would reduce the cost of nationwide presidential elections, it would minimize political tensions, and it would strengthen accountability between the executive and parliament. And the committee also had the view which they endorsed. I mean, they endorsed, this view, right? So they were saying that since parliament already has the power to impeach the president under Section 97 of the Zimbabwean Constitution, then it should also have the authority to elect, the president. That is what, that committee, in endorsing the view and in supporting the view, they then, came in and said, oh, we with the power to impeach. So why not us have the power to just elect, the president? But if you're looking at that, we've argued that that is one of the most controversial aspects of that proposal, because critics have been arguing, Kuti, if we go down that route, what we are doing is we are dismantling the principle of one person, one vote in presidential elections. Because that was a democratic milestone that was achieved after decades of the liberation struggle. Right? Even the retired generals, they came out and they warned that shifting the vote from millions of Zimbabweans to a few hundred MPs is leading to a fundamental era that is of altering the source of executive legitimacy. That was the argument. And it is the argument of so many people. So I don't know whether, that argument ever crossed, them. I don't know, in the hundreds of thousands of responses, I don't know whether, that argument was ever considered. But anyway, moving on, from that, there was also a recommendation by the committee to extend the terms of both the president and members of parliament from 5 years to 7 years. I know Ziambi came in with an interesting metaphor of a runway and an aeroplane, what mambo jumbo. But what has been interesting to note, this is where you can begin to want to understand some of the craziness that is happening with with these folks. The report is revealing that some of them were even suggesting a 10-year limit. So if some of them are even suggesting a 10-year limit, then it gives credence to the argument that people were making that, there's no ceiling to this thing. One can even argue for 20-year term limit, a 20-year term, because of, putting forward this argument that it is ideal for development. But anyway, they just said, okay, let's settle on the 7 years. But it just gives you an indication of how this thing can be manipulated in the future. If they want to present another argument that sits, in line with this ideal argument for development. So, and I mean, if you read that part of the thing of the report, it aligns with the argument that Ziambi was putting in across. He said, "Oh, development, requires time." And us in Zimbabwe, when we have these frequent, elections, the 5-year election, they're always disputed elections. And he's even citing the AU, the SADC, and Commonwealth observers. And he's saying with the reports that they produce provides a justification for having longer cycles in Zimbabwe. However, there's always some bright spots in there because according to the report, there's also an argument that has come from a few that have argued that longer terms weaken accountability and violate Section 328, subsection 7, which prohibits extending a term to benefit, the incumbent. That has been an argument that has dominated, the conversation. There's also a major institutional restructuring recommendation that was made by the committee. In terms of ZEC, and I'm also surprised that ZEC had an opposite view to this. But the committee is recommending transferring the voter registration and the voters roll from ZEC to the Register General, and they are saying that this is a move the majority of submissions supported. I wonder if there can be a court challenge to actually demand access to these submissions, because I'm interested to find out what exactly were people talking about, or it was just a massive dump like they'll just get in my post stories and sign an already prepared script, get them to just sign, and that is a huge dump that was taken to to the parliament, and that is now what is forming the basis of them saying that, oh, the majority of submissions supported this move to move voter registration from ZEC to the Registrar General, citing that it is going to bring about administrative efficiency. And or anyway, the Registrar General already has got access to our civil records. But okay, there were, the minorities all in there that warned that this, is a move or is taking us away, or it taking us back, not away, back uh to a position that we once were, and we said we needed, to reform this in a way to protect the electoral independence of these independent, institutions. And it is actually captured by um, a comment that is in them, where ZEC itself is reported to have told the committee that it preferred the status quo, and it also raised concerns pertaining to the fragmented roles. But anyway, maybe some of this just being used to just say no, it was a genuine process. There's also the support by the committee of a new Zimbabwe Delimitation Commission to take over boundary drawing from ZEC, and increasing the Senate by adding 10 presidential appointees, also raising the qualifications for the Attorney General, and giving the president a greater role in the judicial appointments. So this is where we moved away from that, where you've got a demigod in the form of a president who appoints almost everyone. And we said, no, this cannot happen. This is not healthy for a democracy. We need to move away, from that. But anyway, they've taken us, or they want to take us back there. And they've got the audacity to say that, this is a joint. committee, report, whereby even the opposition are in agreement with this. And I wonder what kind of opposition, we are having in that August House. But anyway, the committee is also backing the repealing of the National Peace and Reconciliation, commission. And the reason for that is almost a laughable, reason, because they are arguing that that body, right, the National Peace and Reconciliation Commission, has completed its mandate. And yet, the Gukura Hundi atrocities, nothing has happened. And they're saying, oh, they've completed, I think that was one of the reasons why it was formed. And then the other and then the other atrocities, that came in, like, the Murabatrina, the 2008, etc., became part and parcel, of that. And they are saying it is completed its mandate. So hence why, it needs to go. But anyway, there's a silver lining, according to them. And not every. I missed one. The one, for the army, whereby the army is no longer going to be asked to uphold the constitution, but it is being asked to do something, anyway, trying to coup proof, to say we no longer want the army to be involved directly in politics, or we no longer want the army to involve itself in politics. They want to foolproof on paper against another 2017. So yes, the committee is saying, oh yes, that is quite important. Yeah, we recommend that section 212 must be amended to remove away to take away the duty of the army when it comes to upholding the constitution. That when things, when things get to a point like it got, quote unquote, in 2017, where it was being said that Mugabe wants to create a dynasty, the army saw that as us, going down a wrong path, and they needed, to come in and address, the situation. So now when we are facing another dynasty, the Munanga Gowani, the Munumutapa one. Oh, that one is okay. No. We cannot have, the army, come in and destabilize that, because this is where we are going as a people. And that is right for the Zimbabwean people. Even though when you talk of Munumutapa, the gentleman, himself, he's not even part and parcel of the lineage of the Munumutapa. But they want to create, their own, dynasty. But the army is not supposed to be coming in and, supposed to be doing anything. So yes, the army, let's take away that role of upholding, the constitution. So yeah, they are, endorsing that, and they've recommended that yes, let us, remove that. But yes, so they said, the community rejected the abolition of the gender commission. We know that was coming, because that was a sweetener, right? And when we begin to have these arguments after the passing of this thing, when we argue with this opposition or those that would have agreed to a trade off, they would start to tell you, oh, this was important. So we decided to do a trade off, to say, okay, we will support this, but this will not support. You know how the things work, right? So the Gender Commission, yes, it has been, rejected. That is, the recommendation that this right here, can never be matched with any other commission because it will create gender blindness. We have done a lot in terms of advancing women's rights. And if you are doing this now, you are taking us back. And, the issue of the traditional leaders to openly participate in politics, the committee rejected that, citing constitutional requirements for neutrality. Say that, these people, they represent people from different walks of life and political persuasions, or people who are affiliated with different political parties. So if you give these guys, the leeway, it goes against, the constitutional requirements for neutrality. That, they need to be, neutral. Right. So moving on. It's a lengthy, document, but it's kind of, wanting to be touching on the things, that I believe are pertinent and are important to informal conversation. There's also the aspect, yeah, there is one near this near this report where they make a claim that there were a total of 537,102 written submissions that were in favor of CAB3. And there were only just under 3,000, which is 2,935 submissions, written submissions that were against CAB3. I don't know what you think about these numbers. I don't know if you think that they are reflective of genuine public sentiments. I don't know if you think that they raise questions about the process. But rest assured, this has to be part and parcel of the national debate. We need to be talking about these things. So as we go into this conversation tonight, what I want us to do is to interrogate what this means for Zimbabwe's future. Do these changes strengthen stability or they concentrate power? Do these changes improve governance or weaken accountability? Does electing the president via parliament enhance democracy? Or it is just another attempt to diminish the people's voice? And anyway, what do these changes mean when a constitution that was adopted by a referendum is now being reshaped through parliamentary supermajorities rather than another national vote? Those are the questions that we need to be dealing with. Because now that we are having, the second reading, I want us to be serious about this. Because this is no longer, theoretical. It is now a live constitutional moment. Parliament will soon decide. Yeah, I'm told, maybe by Friday, the two-third majority by Friday, voting for these changes to become law. So therefore, we as the people of Zimbabwe, we deserve to understand exactly what is at stake here. That is what we want to. That is what we need, to decide. Me, I've always stood on the point of saying no to CAB3. My my opposition to CAB3 is grounded in one simple principle. I think I stated that yesterday. That when we embark on a constitutional amendment, it must be done in a way that strengthens democracy, not to dilute democracy. So going through, this, joint committee reports, my concerns have even, deepened because them recommending the removal of the direct election of the president, it takes power away from me as a citizen, it takes power away from you as a citizen, and it is handing this power to political elites. Those guys who are sitting in parliament right now. I was watching a video from Mashingo. You could actually tell the sentiment that people have pertaining to these people. And now we want to extend their tenure of power from 5 years to 7 years. That right there, ladies and gentlemen, to me it reduces accountability at a time when we Zimbabweans need it more. When we need more of accountability and not less of the accountability. They are saying that, okay, transferring the voters roll away from ZEC, back to government, to a government department. Just imagine. Reverse, it makes streamlines things. But to me, it is reversing a hard-won reform that was meant to protect electoral integrity. Anyway, ZEC is always, they never, they never, uh, 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 you know, they never did anything in that, regard anyway. But still, there was that which still existed that would speak to the independence of these, commission. And they are restructuring these key institutions, delimitation to judicial appointments, concentrating authority in ways that risk weakening the aspect of checks and balances. Because if everything is under the president, where do we begin to have, the checks and balances? Because the president can simply, if a person or if a decision is made by a judge and it is not to the liking of the president, that president can simply, remove, the judge. I mean, I want to acknowledge that, they are saying that, oh yes, this was overwhelmingly, supported. But I'm looking at the process, the parliamentary process. This is why you are having 210 challenges, challenging, these MPs. But the scale of these numbers, come on, guys, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. The scale of these numbers, they raise legitimate questions about the process itself. Issues of representation and issues of transparency, because we all witnessed what happened in the 3 months. Because surely if we okayed this constitution by 93% via a referendum, surely it should not be subjected to the whims of parliament to fundamentally, reshape it without the same level of direct public consent. That is my issue. So this is why I say no. I'm not rejecting any notions of reform, but my rejection of a reform that centralizes power, reduces my participation, and alters the democratic architecture without a national conversation in a national mandate, to me, are the grounds for rejection. Because we deserve stability, development, and strong institutions. And that is correct, but not at the cost of weakening the people's voice, not at the cost of weakening my voice, because this is what is exactly this thing, is all about. So when they claim that, oh, yes, we are going to be electing the president through parliament and it will reduce cost and tensions, to me, ladies and gentlemen, cost saving is not a sufficient justification for removing a core democratic right. You can never remove a core democratic right on the basis of cost saving. If they are pushing that, it is a reflection, or it is reflective of their failure as an administration to administer affairs of the country. Because our constitution, they protect the principles, They do not protect a budget. A constitution protects principles, not budgets. But we are being taken into that sphere whereby they can give it as a justification. And if a thing or if cost becomes the basis for limiting direct elections, then any democratic process could be restricted on the same grounds. This is what they're saying. They're even acknowledging that majority of African, democracies, including those in our, in the region, some of them, retain direct presidential elections because they anchor legitimacy in the people and not in political elites. So therefore, uh, wanting to reduce the tensions that are caused by undemocratic conducting of elections. We are simply calling, and this has been our current call, to say, Kuti, let us strengthen the electoral institutions. You don't have to eliminate the public vote because you've got an unpopular president. A president who has struggled to even achieve the 55% of the vote, even 51% of the vote. His wins have been, choreographed and massaged for him to just satisfy the 50 plus 1 vote. There's something that is fundamentally wrong, and we require the strengthening of the electoral institutions, not these changes that they are making. In order to say, oh, Parliament already impeaches the president, so it should elect the president. I don't know whether this thing is going to be debated in Parliament, fully. An impeachment process, ladies and gentlemen, is a check. It is a check on what, it is a check on your ability and your competencies in terms of upholding the Constitution. It is not a substitute for popular sovereignty. So even if they are given the power to remove the president under Section 97, that power is being given precisely because the president is elected by the people. So the notion of checks and balances work because the branches derive legitimacy from the people and from different sources. So if a parliament becomes both the elector and the remover, then the executive becomes structurally dependent on political elites rather than citizens. And that weakens the notion of separation of power. I wish they could hear us, on these aspects. I wish, they can. Oh, 7-year terms, we improve development because election disrupt, progress. Where has it ever been recorded in history that longer terms guarantee development? It is not about longer terms guaranteeing development, but it is about strong institutions. Create strong institutions, because those are the institutions that guarantee development. In Ghana, in Kenya, in South Africa, they've got shorter terms. And they've achieved significant development gains over the years because accountability cycles, they keep leaders responsive. You knowing that, my legacy is on the line here. You knowing that I only got a limited time can get you to do what can be used to define you. to define your legacy. And they even have got the audacity to be telling us that some people are even preferring, 10 years. So this right here, ladies and gentlemen, it shows that the logic is not about development timelines, but it is about reducing electoral frequency. That is that. Apana chimwe chiripo other than that. Even despite the existence of the safeguard, the 328 subsection 7, which explicitly prohibits extending terms to benefit incumbents, a safeguard designed to prevent exactly this scenario here that I'm talking about. How can people have the audacity to say we want it, to go on even for 10 years? Ah, I mean, the committee's own report is saying, could yes, transferring the voters' roll to the Registrar General will improve accuracy. Uh, okay, they're acknowledging that in the past, right, we used to have the Registrar General deal with the voters' roll, and it was and that role was removed, was taken away from the Registrar General because of credibility concerns. And Zek even weigh in and say this risks fragmentation, my electoral rolls, and there's got, and introduces the risk of undermining independence and reversing the biometric and polling station based reforms introduced since 2018. And the international best practices are clear. Independent electoral commissions are there to manage voters' rolls, to protect neutrality. Anyway, we are a unique case in Zimbabweans. Tagaroyo and Nakafa. Otherwise, I don't pay you. I'd royal Nora. And you've got them, saying, oh, if we create a delimitation commission, that will improve, fairness. Where is the fairness, in removing this from an independent, institution and placing it in a new body where the risk of politicization of the process are very high? Because it is the president who is going to, because the appointment of this, thing, or the appointment of the members of the thing, they are not going to be fully insulated from the executive, influence. So what can stop them from doing, the report, the delimitation thing in a way that satisfies whatever it is, that, they want to do? So if the committee itself can understand the risk of institutional confusion and other things like data transfer challenges, what is this telling us? What are they telling to the rest of the parliament? Could you want to vote for this thing, and yet there are high chances that it's going to be weakening and not strengthening the electoral integrity? But that is their master plan. That is what they're interested in. That is what they're all about. That is where their focus is on. Because to them, there's no one who is capable of ruling the country other than anyone coming from ZANU-PF. They want to argue that, if we are going to be having presidential appointees in the Senate, and that is right there important because it brings in expertise. Who told them that it brings in, expertise? Can we not use, independent commissions, advisory councils, or even non-partisan, appointments? But what they're simply doing is expanding the presidential influence over the legislature. Because him is going to be appointing, 10 people. In addition to the 7, in addition to the 7, I think it's 5 or 7 non-constituent members of parliament that, he appoints. And now he's going to be, appointing an additional 10 people. There's no stability that will be brought in by these, reforms. Stability is born out of trust. Stability is born out of transparency. Stability is born out of independent institutions, not from reducing our participation. So whatever it is that they want to do, removing direct elections, extending terms, centralizing power, and restructuring the electoral bodies, all these, they introduce a risk of reducing accountability. And we know historically what that leads to: less stability and many more things. Right? We are staring at the barrel, or we are staring at an inevitability. Yekuti, we will slide down a path that we may never recover from in the next 20 or 30 years. I thought, we'd gotten to do things in a way that is reflective of a departure of the past 37 years of Robert Mugabe's rule. But we all know, we are being told whoever wins, the game wins. So we are just pawns in this game. We are just there to be used, by these people. If that doesn't make you angry, I don't know what will. But anyway, thank you very much, for joining the space. I will give you guys, the opportunity, to react. But I mean, that is, in a nutshell, in a summary form, what that committee has recommended and what, they intend, to do in the coming, few days in terms of making these take a one step towards becoming, law, because we know with the 2/3 majority in parliament, it moves to the Senate, another 2/3, majority by the end of the month. There's going to be His Majesty Royal Assent by Emerson Mnangagwa pending, his signature, since, they're already calling him the Munumutapa. But anyway, Owen, did you say? Owen Charlie? Oh, bye. Kwa wanda yeda ni gweno? Ay kaka. Azma biswa. But anyway, that is what's up, ladies and gentlemen. So if I can ask you guys to make your request, and then I'll bring you speakers. Zim for life, how you doing?
Hello, Amadiko Baba.
Ndakasimba mukoma wangu kurise kwa muriko.
Tiripo kungoona zviri kunyorwa izvi kutyisa izvi. Zviri kutyisa.
Zvatyisa here mukoma?
Aiwa, no, zvakutyisa because reality is now sinking in kuti tinenge tatonyura kapanapo.
Mataimbure mzacho munenge muri kwaona semukoma by Friday chino chinofana nyene kichadodayira.
Saka muti achizviziva chichinzi kupera kwemwedzi, izvezvi taakuzwa Friday. Muchazozviva chichinzi mangwana yapasa neno. I'll be short, but it looks like the focal point for machanges avari kuita is to consolidate power. Havana chavashowa so far chikuratidza kuti vane ma-interest for like the main sort of like a normal average Zimbabwean person. Vari kushowa like the aggression vari kushowa ndevanhu who are actually fighting for their own existence, to protect whatever they have, and obviously to dominate maybe the sort of foreseeable future. And it's very disconcerting kufunga kuti they've been in power since 2018. Havana kana sign they are to show for us to have confidence in them kuti even mukavapa kana 50 years vanoita anything, nothing to write home about. Hapana kana chavashowa. So kungofunga ndokwazvakuenda, I think it's scary. I don't know for munhu wese ari panapa, but zviri kutyisa is because pekutanga unenge uchimbonzwa kune army kutochichi someone is going to intervene, but it looks like tese tiri kungomachwa kunochekwa musoro chakaenda. There's nothing we can do. The brazenness, even kunyora kuti vamwe vari kuda 10 years, though it sounds very orchestrated, like zvinhu zvangokandwa imomo just to kungoshowa kuti we're confident in zvatiri kuita panapa. I just genuinely don't believe kuti majority of the people in Zimbabwe managed to express themselves. I don't believe that somebody's there's a chokwadi or the numbers they're coming up with. There's nothing chinokupa confidence in whatever they're saying at the moment. I think the only hope that maybe something drastic happens in the next few days. Whatever it is, I think that's the only thing I think I want to matter for, because I think moving forward, I don't think anyone of us at Panaba can even know what to expect, because the show so far, the brazenness, the flaunting your marry, just the showing off, it just doesn't suggest these key people have got they've got our interest at heart. I think what Kowari, this is a joke. The only statement I know very long statement. Apana kana humility. It's very like, it's almost like this thing is done deal. So I mean, I yield wrong, but I'm scared, and I'm very, very intrigued about this, because it's absolutely shocking. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Mkomayo. Thank you very much. Yeah, bagaipa. Dr. Tadini Murisei.
Uncle Magadi.
Mushe Nukusquera Muriziri, what they say go junior politician.
Right, that's one going out to go to Boposa, Bishop Mamira, Pangovakazwama voice, Emma Yuchayo, Pangovanga, it has a Wangatere was him, Dara Ato, Quasharara voice, the air Gutaura. You know, but I